Okay. Good afternoon. This is the Thursday, August 15th, 2019 meeting of the Athens City Planning Commission. 4 of the members are present, 1 is absent. And let's see, there is no one in our live studio audience to take a oath from who's going to speak to the commission. So a quorum has been established. Minutes for June 6th. Do you want to look that over? Are there any comments, additions, comments, whatever for that? And if there isn't, I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
And we have 3 in favor, 1 abstention, and 1 absentee. The July 17th minutes, there are not enough members for a quorum to approve those minutes at this time. So we'll go ahead and move that to the next meeting. Cases for today, the case number 19-03, zoning designation request from the City Council for Hillcrest Drive annexation. Good afternoon, Mr. Loeb. Did you want to get our live or our TV audience up to par on that?
Sure, I can talk in some detail on this. There's a few different. The request is for there's a parcel on Hillcrest Avenue on the city's far east side. Half of it has a house on it, which half of that house is on an adjoining parcel to the immediate east, which is inside the city limits, and then half of the house, including the driveway, it's been built. That home has been there for at least 25, 30 years, if not longer. It's in an unincorporated area, an unincorporated parcel. As well, if you look to the immediate south of that highlighted yellow area where Hillcrest Avenue is, or Hillcrest Drive, there's a small portion of Hillcrest that is outside the city limits. And so that was technically a county road, whereas the rest of Hillcrest was a city street. About a year ago, the city was doing their paving, and because there was a county portion of Hillcrest that was not in the city limits, we did not pave that portion of it. And the property owners were under the impression historically that all of it actually was inside the city limits, including the parcel where their home is. So we all went back through the record and discovered that there was a paper trail that started but was never completed, is my understanding, and that the piece of real estate was never annexed into the city, and the county part of Hillcrest was never accepted by the city. And so, common sense said this should be in the city. There's no reason for the county to be maintaining this small piece of real estate. So we worked it all out with the property owners. The city agreed to accept that piece of road into the city. And then we also said, well, if we're going to accept the piece of road, we want to make sure that all the real estate, it made sense for it to be annexed in. So my understanding is that council is working through the other aspects of this, but of course, it's part of an annexation. They need a zoning designation recommendation from the Planning Commission. My opinion would be that this piece of real estate should be zoned as R1 and left at that. But of course, I respect the opinion of the Planning Commission on this matter.
R1 is the zoning of the adjacent lot.
That is correct. Yeah, the entire neighborhood, with the exception of a few parcels that face on to the south end of that neighborhood towards East State Street which are zoned for commercial.
Ms. Bain?
How big is the lot that the Aurelies have altogether?
Offhand, I'm not sure of that, Ms. Bain.
Goes all the way to the city limits, right? I mean, they extend northward to the city limits.
Yeah, it's a large lot. It's like, according to the memo, it is 3/4 of an acre. It's a narrow lot, but it's long. Yeah, it extends up the hill there.
Imagine a house being built on that.
No.
Correct.
Right.
I understand. I think the same thing.
Okay, so my other question then is, I guess the current head of the Planning and Development Committee dropped the ball, because that was when I was on council, believe it or not, and we talked about this, and they were already talking about who's going to snowplow until each time it was, okay. Slap them around for not doing it. I thought for sure it would have been done. Oh well, just
It's okay.
my irate I'm already irate, so we'll just go ahead. It's because I'm dealing with 4-year-olds. Okay?
Do you have any comments on
Are
that?
there any other comments?
Strike the 4-year-old comment, please.
Okay.
I will make a motion.
Okay.
I will make motion to move forward with zoning this particular parcel, including it within the R1 neighborhood and zoning at R1.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous with one absentee. Case number 19-04, BZA proposal for small lot variance requests. And Mr. Stone, who brought this to our attention a month or so ago, is not here today. Is this something that we care to discuss right now, or?
I don't think there's a level of urgency to get this through.
Okay.
I think that we can wait for the next planning commission meeting in which Service Safety Director Stone is here to speak to this.
Did you want to say something?
I've got a question though. What is a small lot? It seems like when I first started on the planning commission, Paul did a study of all of our lots. And the only person that had a big enough lot was yours truly, of the members that were there. So
That is correct, right?
And it is a mess because it goes, well, that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
But I would like to know how this compares to the part of the zoning code that says you can build on any lot of record. Why is this redundant? I mean, it says you can, honestly, it does.
Right.
Somebody
It does
took
say,
out.
right. No, it says you can build on any lot of record. I'm not very familiar with what this document itself, I'll say that to start with. Construction of on an existing lot of record, the argument has always been, though, you still need to meet the setback requirements and all of that. And if you can't meet those, then you need to get a variance for construction. So even if you've got a small lot, you know, how small can your house be and how big can the house be if,
I don't think
Right.
that's reading a lot into the information
right?
that's there, because I think it meant there's lots of small lots in Athens and you have to be able to build.
Right.
on
Well,
it.
this is for substitutions on existing construction, though, not for new construction, is my understanding.
What do you mean substitution?
This is for a lot that already has existing structures on it, and they are, let's say they can't meet the left side setback. They can meet everything else, but they can't meet the left side setback, but they want to extend their deck all the way over to the left side of the property. They technically can't do that now.
Better not do it in my neighborhood because the lines are so.
Or even a
Right.
deck, even if they want to build a deck in the rear,
There's a
but they
deck-
can't meet it because of a side yard setback
But a
issue.
deck is just on posts, isn't it? I mean, is everyone?
Can be, but most of the time they're attached to the main house.
No, I meant the front part is on post. The part
Correct.
that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't understand.
But let's say it's an addition to the rear of the property even. Let's say they want to extend the kitchen and create a small breakfast nook or something like that. If you can't meet the side yard setback, the goal of the code is to conform. And so if you can't, they give examples here of cases where this has occurred, but I would prefer that the BZA explain it to you better than I can. I'll say that.
I'm
But
not sure. They say yes to almost everything, right?
right.
And
And what they
so-
say is that if they say yes to almost everything, then make the code conform to say yes to it without having to go through that additional
Maybe we
loop.
get a more stringent. I mean, the neighborhood associations maybe need to get brought in on this too. Because if you're using it for the garage concept, is that one in here too?
Nancy, I don't want to be the voice of this request. And you're looking at me as if you're expecting me to answer their
I was hoping you
question.
had some
I
wisdom.
don't have any insight on this situation. The Board of Zoning Appeals does, and this came from them. And Mr. Stone has more information as well. I don't know who, I assume, well, they voted on this, I believe. But I don't know. Again, you're asking me questions that I'm not prepared to answer for
Nancy,
you, and I don't
maybe
want to speak on their behalf.
Maybe I can help a little bit with this. If I'm not mistaken, when we had the boards and commissions meeting at the community center some time ago, where all the boards and commissions were invited to come, that one of the questions that came from the group was from the chair of the BZA, John Galsey.
Who's been on for a long time.
He's been on for a very long time, and that was helpful too, because one of the comments that he made is, can the Board of Zoning Appeals reach out to city administration when we're seeing something repeatedly over and over and over again, and we're voting basically the same way every time for what the request is from the property owner. Is this something that can come directly to the director of code enforcement or to the service safety director? This is not dissimilar in terms of the request as that we found with ourselves when we were talking about cell tower modifications. If it's a minor modification, should we, continually make it a communication and then a case and drag something out to where we've consistently voted the same way for a minor modification to a cell tower when it becomes antenna replacements? And so I think that's where this is coming from. But let's have Service Safety Director here, and he can speak more to this.
I want to ask a couple of questions before we start down that road. I think, and I championed it because I felt like I was out of my element, that I did not understand what was going on with the antenna. And it wasn't on the ground, it was up on the antenna. As long as you had an engineer certifying that it was not going to fall on them.
Right.
Okay, but let's go to one of the cases that they brought, an old deteriorating deck, or the garage. The garage, is that the one? Old historic accessory building, a garage? Okay, that's at the very end on page 2. Okay, now, wouldn't you require, I was driving through the west side yesterday and I noticed how many standing garages there were. And I was wondering how many of those could stand another story on? How many of them are in conformity with the code? I mean, I think one of the advantages of the zoning board, maybe it doesn't get used that way, but neighbors can come in and say, I'm a little concerned about this. It's too close to the lot line. Or it's not able to, and in fact, in this case, they had the architect say, it's not going to hold the second story. Isn't that what the architect said? Because they had to rebuild it, they tore the whole, I talked to the neighbors around there, and that's what they said. They tore the whole dang thing down and started over and made a much better garage. But, so these people can turn around and sell it next week, and all the promises they made are gone because it's a piece of property that has a second-story apartment almost. You have to go to OU and buy one of those things that has a refrigerator and a microwave on top, and they're set. I mean, I don't want to give anybody ideas, but there's so much housing shortage in this town. I'm really concerned. This is a slippery slope, especially this garage one, because I can see lots of examples that are, so they did it. So they were outstanding builders, and they had it. But some of them, you see things around here that are pretty half-baked, haven't you? I'm sure Lance has. Buildings and so on and so forth.
But I think there's other bulk controls and things that can come into play to stop what you're talking about.
Only if you can figure it out. And I've got 4 people living down the street from me in a 3 people neighborhood. Not the I have too much experience with code enforcement officers. I'm sorry. I'm skeptical. Not you, but other times. I could give you some names, but I'm not going to.
Well, I think
with our recent past. Yes?
I think what I'm hearing, though, is that I think the difference would be that when we approved the towers, that, again, the footprint was not changing. With what the BZA is asking to just automatically defer to the code director, does a neighbor have any type of redress beyond that?
Or notification.
Beyond going to the BZA?
Not if it doesn't go to the BZA.
Okay, so then if you automatically approved it yourself, the neighbor could be really unknowing about the whole process to begin with, right?
That could happen if somebody was building a brand new house. All of a sudden they come in and there's footers, somebody comes in and starts digging footers, and now they're getting a brand new house and they didn't even know anybody bought the property and decided to build a house. It's, it's going to be the same scenario.
That's not an existing structure, and it's, that's maybe a point.
But then again, the footprint is changing in there, though. I guess that
True,
would be
the footprint is changing, but the setback is not changing.
I think anything that isn't an R1 zone deserves special treatment, and even in the R2 zone, there aren't any to speak of. But I think that there's an eagerness to use every single square foot of your property in some neighborhoods, and those of us who live at close quarters don't want it to happen to us. Now, it wouldn't happen in RJ and my area because we don't have separate garages.
We don't have usable land.
Yeah, that's right.
Number one, no.
But we don't have separate garages. And this is where this is going to come in. I mean, if you had a garage attached to your house and it met the requirements, you can do whatever you jolly well please with the next story at your peril, but you can do it. But if it's out there standing by itself, and there are many on the west side, I think the West Side Neighborhood Council has heard about this a little bit because it's really intrusive on the neighborhood. If they start to have housing, I mean, I'll go back to that. I'm not going to, let me stop.
Nancy, I assume you've read this memo from,
Yeah, who wrote it?
about their rationale. I don't know, but I'm assuming that you've read this.
Generally, they
And
sign.
about the line of thought that they're arguing for, is that you shouldn't be punished for building a back deck because you can't meet a front yard setback for a house that was built 100 years ago on a 3,000-foot lot.
Well,
They're saying you can meet the backyard setback requirement.
because we reduced it when my.
But what they're saying is they have to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals because they don't meet a front yard setback for a house that was built whenever, and they want to put a back deck on. They meet the rear yard setback, but you have to meet both under the code. And you can't do that because our code is written for a 5,000 square foot lot or larger, and it is designed for a suburban cul-de-sac look, which doesn't exist in the city except on the far south side and at University Estates. Our code is written for a suburban style that the west side, your neighborhood, the Near East Side, and the Far East Side do not match.
I think that
That's
more match.
that's the problem, is what they're trying to argue
Well, it's
here.
an interpretation of the code. I don't know why the front yard setback. I'd say on my street, people don't even know where the front yard setback begins.
But
and
the
right
code
of way
office
ends.
does, but that's,
Oh, no, the code office has an interpretation.
But again,
My
this
deed
is-
says it's another
yeah.
thing.
right.
And so, you're,
I mean, the memo explains what they're trying to say. If you have additional questions from the Board of Zoning Appeals, I believe we could ask somebody from the BZA to come and talk to the Planning Commission.
I think you ought to
But-
also ask the
Right.
neighborhood associations who do have an investment in this, in their neighborhoods.
I'm not pushing for this. You're looking at me as if I'm the voice of this. I'm not, if the Planning Commission wants to ask the neighborhood associations, you've said it several times now, you can invite them to a meeting as well. It's on the agenda for this evening or this afternoon right now. There's nobody present for it. I don't know if anybody from the Planning Commission has received the emails. I hear what you're saying,
But how can you say,
but how can,
Well, why don't we, when Mr. Stone comes back,
Sure.
I think he's probably in a position to better answer some of these questions. Why don't we go ahead and move
that's
along
totally fine. yeah.
on the thing there?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think there's some information that you're asking for, Nancy, that we will certainly get as to, was this the chair of the BZA that brought this document forward and
what kind of preparation does he have for this? That's the question I would have. They're
Sure.
citizens.
Sure.
And they,
But essentially what this is saying is it's not that there would not be a review process, it's just that the review process would be done administratively.
yeah, and that makes sense except in residential areas, which are supposed to be protected.
The problem is only in residential areas, is what they're saying, and they always approve these 5-0.
Well, always approving is not an argument
I'm-
in my case.
Well, but
All I'm doing is reading what's in the
Right.
same document.
Why don't we
that's
go
on-
ahead and
I guess you're going to have trouble with me. I'm sorry.
let's pick this up when Mr. Stone comes back. The
Agreed.
next meeting. Communications, there are none today. Report from the city planner, Mr. Logue.
Just briefly, continuing to work on the comprehensive plan. Lance and I, as well as Bob Hetty, are going to have a meeting on a separate issue. Lance and I are going to do a follow-up meeting with representatives on the Oblenis Health project that was presented to the Planning Commission last month. We're going to meet with them next week, and I believe they're prepared. They're prepping for a presentation coming to the Planning Commission in September. Otherwise, that's all I have this
Thank
afternoon.
you. Thank you. Any comments to Mr. Logue? Mr. Allison?
No, Paul already touched on the Oblenis. The only other thing I would like to remind everybody is the students will be back next week, so they'll be, most of them are back already, but just to let everybody make it out there that they will be back at the end of next week for sure.
Okay, thank you. Any comments for Mr. Allison? There are no resident citizens to speak in our live audience. Announcements and other business? Okay, our next meeting then would be September 5th, 2019. With the work of the Planning Commission completed, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you very much.